Hey guys, what's up? Jeffrey Cundy here, and in this video we're going to be dialing in our drive pedals. Now you know there's a ton of drive pedals out there on the market, making us as guitar players either confused or just constantly wondering, are we playing the right gear? Why do we have the pedals that we have? Why did I buy this pedal when Walrus or JHS just released this other pedal that could be so much better? Or the Klon just became the holy grail of pedals and now it's worth $2,000, and if I'd only had that pedal then I'd sound that much better. So I want to tackle that problem with this video today. I want to set up 3 to 4 different pedals that are on my pedal board and talk about how to set them up in a way that's useful to me and why it makes almost zero difference what pedal I have on my pedal board as a drive pedal. And I mean that fully. It doesn't really matter what drive pedal I'm using. It's the way that I use it. It's the EQ that I'm getting out of the drive pedal and the way that I'm playing the guitar that's gonna make all the difference. And I want to teach that to you today, talk about why that is. Again, if you've watched the last video, dialing in your amp, then you know that in this video, my philosophy throughout getting your tone, crafting your tone, is going to be creating this nice bed of full big tone. Now that's going to change a little bit when we start adding pedals, because pedals have their own unique color. And when I say color, that means their own unique tone shape, their own unique EQ shape, which is going to affect the way I play and the way I sound in a mix. So I want to talk about how to set that up, and basically the school of thought of having different stages to create different dynamics in your playing. So enough of me talking, let's get to playing. I'm going to zoom in on the pedal board right now and talk about setting up 3 different pedals in succession with each other. I'm going to talk about when you want to stack and when you just want to use them as separate individual pedals. Here we go. All right, so here we have my pedal board set up, and I want to talk about this pedal right here, the Walrus Audio Compressor. Then we're going to move on to the Little Green Wonder, the Del Mar, and the 1981 Inventions pedal right here. So there's 3 main drives, and I set those up in stages, and then the compressor is going to be always on. Now before we get there, I do want to mention the basic underlayment of the school of thought behind turning pedals on is, like I said before, is to create dynamic. Now the ground rule that we have to remember is that when we're playing the guitar, for a studio recording or for a live performance, that our job is to do the sound guy's job. Our job is actually to mix our own guitar. So when I turn on a pedal, I want to make sure that it's something that the sound guy isn't going to have to move his fader at all. My goal in a live scenario is that the sound guy never touches my fader at all, that he doesn't do any EQ, and that he doesn't touch my fader at all. He sets it and he leaves it for the entire set. When I go to play a solo, he doesn't have to bump me up. When I go to play rhythm, he doesn't have to bump me down. When I go to play clean stuff, he doesn't have to turn me up because my clean is too low. And so what I mean by that is that when I go through each one of these stages, from solo to clean to rhythm, whatever it might be, that my increments that I'm jumping up are appropriate in level. Now, I believe that it's appropriate to only jump up in small increments. So when I play my clean tone, it might be right here. And when I play my dirty tone, my rhythm tone, it might be just right here in volume. So let's say here's the loudest I'm going to be, here's the quietest I'm going to be. My clean tone, my smallest tone is going to be right here. My rhythm tone's going to be right here. My lead tone might be right here. My super lead tone might be right here. But I'm not moving very much in level as I bump up in different stages of my drive. It's a slow, gradual climb, but nothing. My clean tone isn't here, and my dirty tone isn't way up here. That's what's going to make the sound guy's job really hard and make you as a guitar player just be really hard to manage in other band members, in your mixes, or whatever it might be. So my increments, and you'll hear it in a minute, are very gradual as far as level. Now the shaping of the tone changes, which helps to create dynamic and takes the place almost of the volume the rise in volume. For instance, when we get to my second stage pedal, it's going to be a lot brighter, it's going to make it seem like it's louder, but it's actually not louder. It's just brighter. It's more clear. So it's cutting through the mix more. So when I go to play a solo, it might be brighter, but it's actually not that much louder, making it easy on the sound guy and easy on the rest of the band guys on stage to manage me as a player. Now, I think that is a rule of thumb for almost every instrument on stage, but since this is a guitar class, we're just going to keep it to guitar for now. All right, let's talk about compression real quick, and then we'll move on to drive. I like to think of compression as an always-on signal, an always-on pedal. So here's no compression, and here's compression on. Now, obviously, there wasn't a whole lot of change there. There wasn't a dynamic shift, and that's the goal. When I put on my compressor, I don't want it to boost the amp at all. I don't want it to cut out the amp at all. I just want it to stay the same. The only reason for my compressor pedal is to actually add sustain to my notes without squashing my tone. Now, if I add too much sustain, it's actually going to squash my tone so much that it takes the dynamic away from my playing. So you can't actually hear when I dig in or I pull back. I want to get a little bit more dynamic in my playing, so I'm going to keep that level down a little bit. Now this would be more, if you're used to traditional compressors, then this is more like the threshold. So how much of my tone is actually compressing, and then my output is at unity, meaning when the pedal's off, it's the same level as when my pedal's on. Then my attack is set on this pedal, just right about 12 o'clock. Now let me turn my lapel off so you can really hear that tone. Now I'm setting these pedals up with a dirty amp. I prefer a dirty amp because I think it ends up making the pedals sound that much smoother. I think it smooths out all my tone if I can get a little bit of breakup like I am right now out of the amplifier. But as we go through these pedals now, you're going to hear the colors start to change. The drive settings are going to change just a little bit. Now let's turn on my first stage drive. So this I like to call my first stage drive, which is going to be like my rhythm style drive. So I don't want a whole lot of dirt. I just want a little bit of warmth out of this drive pedal. Now first I'm going to set the volume to unity. So when I turn the pedal off versus on, it's going to be the same volume. Now, as I dial this in and set the EQ, I'm trying to retain that nice flat EQ for this pedal. It's going to be different for these pedals, but for this pedal, I'm trying to get a nice flat EQ. And I'd say I use my rhythm drive for anything that I'm playing rhythm guitar on, for any soft leads, for any soft guitar parts. I like to back off and sort of play around with this. So let me play around with it. I'm going to turn my lapel off and dial it in a little bit. So right there is where I like it. As you can tell, when I turn it on, it's actually almost like it's cutting out a little bit of the top end. It's sort of gluing everything together and making a nice smooth texture, a nice smooth platform for me to play around. When I dig into the guitar, it's not too bright, but it's not taking away any clarity. There's a nice big full low end in there still. So that's how I set up my rhythm drive. If you want to match that on your rhythm drive pedal, just do it by ear. Everything is by ear if you haven't heard or noticed by now. Everything I'm talking about is less about settings and more by ear. So when I set the volume, it's about where is the unity? Is it the same volume off as it is on? Drive, it's just by ear. I just want a little bit, a tiny bit of warmth out of this drive pedal. And then EQ with the body of this pedal, I want it to be nice and full, to cut a little bit of the highs down and just to add a nice glue down to this pedal. Now moving on to my Del Mar, which is going to be more of my lead pedal. A lot of my leads are played with this second stage drive. So most of my set, if during the live set or during the live recording, is either going to be this pedal or this pedal. And we'll get to this one in a second, but almost exclusively these two pedals for the most part. And this is primarily like my main source of tone. Now let's get into this. So my leads, again, I want to emphasize that my volume isn't going to jump up a ton, but drive is going to be more forceful. It's going to be a little bit more gained up, and then treble is going to be a little hotter. So I want this to cut through the mix. When I turn this pedal on, it's going to cut through above the rest of the band without killing everybody's ears. So I want to be careful to dial that in to make sure it's still smooth, brighter but smooth. And you can have bright without having hurt. You can have bright with still sounding smooth. So let's check out these settings that I just dialed in right now and see if I'm close. Turning off my lapel, and I'm just going to start twisting knobs. Okay, you can tell I'm now switching back and forth, so that's an important part of the getting tone process, is hearing the clean, hearing the rhythm, and hearing the lead, and making sure they all make sense together. So you can tell I'm not jumping up huge amounts in volume, but definite color. Like clean is crystal clear and a little bit of bright. Rhythm is a little bit more warm, a little bit more drive. Than Del Mar, that lead is super bright, but not too bright to where it hurts. It's punchy, it's got nice big mid range, but it's not jumping up a ton in volume. Again, one more time, switching back between all three. Okay, now some of you out there are going to ask about stacking, which is basically combining two different pedals together. Now there's a caution here, is that when you stack, you're going to end up overloading the amplifier and super saturating your sound. So it depends on how you set it up, but stacking can be cool. It's just a cautionary thing. So it's actually adding one more stage in my drive. So if my stages are rhythm, lead, and then super lead, which we haven't gotten to, one that you can fit in between lead and super lead is going to be lead plus rhythm, and that's going to add another level of saturation. It's not going to add more EQ, it's not going to add more high end. It's just, if I want more saturation out of this pedal without reaching down and turning my gain up, then I can turn on that pedal together. Now check that out. can tell it added a little bit of volume, not much, no EQ change, and then just a tad more saturation, which is pretty cool. And that being said, if that's my, let's say that's my third stage, these two together, so that makes this now the fourth stage of my chain. Now let's dial this in. Now I want this to be crazy dirty, super bright, super punchy, but not so much that it is a huge jump in level again. So let's dial this up, see where we get. Now you heard when I switched back and forth between these two, this one got more dirty. It got a little crazier, but it's still nice and smooth on the top end versus this. So now let's play all three together. I'm just gonna play one chord on each one of them so you can hear the difference. So here we go, clean. Now, I feel like this one, and I'm sure you thought the same thing, doesn't sound great with chords. I don't play this a whole lot with chords. It's more of a lead pedal. It's more like I play single note stuff with it because when I play chords, it all just compresses and gets kind of nasty together and it just doesn't sound that great. So this is a super lead pedal. That's basically what it does. It's super nasty. It's real crunchy, but it sounds great. If you dial in this top end, this cut knob is going to be really where you want to dial in. Make sure there's not too much high end, because the more you drive a pedal, the more it's going to increase your top end. So if this is your even playing field, like I was talking about with the microphone in the last video, the more I drive, the more that treble is going to boost. The more up here, the more that treble is going to want to boost up. Up here, dude, that pedal is going to want to boost up your top end like crazy. And this is where guitar players fall short with their tone, is they don't manage that top end as they boost up. So it's actually like, as I boost up, I'm managing this top end of this pedal, making sure it's smooth, trying to bring that top end down while retaining clarity. Not so down that it makes it dark sounding, but so that it's flat, maybe it's slightly boosted. And that's really what you want to watch. Make sure your top end in general, if you've heard one thing from me in this last two videos, is that your top end, your high end on your guitar is manageable, is pleasing to the ear, and nice and smooth. And that will make people love your tone. Okay, now let's go over some clean tone stuff. So all that was set up with my dirty amp setup, but if I want to have that clean tone that I got in the last video, let me pull that back up again. So I'm adding in more compression now and turning the amp down. So now, again, this is when I dig into the amp and there's no breakup at all. Now, turning on pedals now is going to be a little bit trickier, because when I turn on a pedal, it's not going to make the amp become more saturated. It's going to make everything in this pedal is just doing all the work to drive the amp. So I'm going to have to actually ride this volume pedal even more, this volume knob even more, to make sure that it's not crazy jumping in volume once I put on a boost pedal. And that's the thing with low amp volumes, is that once you start stacking pedals, the volume starts jumping like crazy. Now, if I turn my amp to where the speaker is blaring and it's nice and saturated, then I can get away with more with adding pedals. my volume isn't jumping like crazy because the amp only gets so loud basically. But when I add a pedal to a clean amp, it means that it's gonna jump a ton when I add that pedal in. So now I'm gonna redo these settings based on clean tone, and I'll show you when I turn this pedal on, it's gonna sound different than when I had a dirty amp. So, and to do that, I'm gonna turn off my lapel. Okay, you see I got there, but the settings look different. I had to turn the volume knob down, and I had to turn the drive knob up because I'm not getting as much natural drive out of the amp as I normally would if the amp was gained up. Now let's move on to the Del Mar. If, in my opinion, my tone isn't as good now as it was with the amp driven, but if you want a nice, clean, super spanky, clean tone, this is the way to do it. You got to turn your amp down and get it out of compression, and then work with your pedals even more. So here we go to Del Mar now, setting up my lead tone. All right, so what I'm trying to do is maintain that nice level EQ again with all these different settings. Look at how low my volume knob is on this Del Mar when I have clean setup, and that's something you're gonna have to be very careful of, is just writing this volume knob like I keep saying. One more pedal now, and then we're done. The 1981 drive with clean tone, sorry, with clean amps. Okay guys, that's it for this video. That's how to set up pedals with dirty amps and clean amps. It should work across amp platform, all these same principles that we're talking about. See you in the next video.